Great. Well, welcome everybody to our web class on getting more sleep. So tonight we're going to cover everything you want to know about sleep at different ages, and especially how can you get more sleep. And we want to customize this to you. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box and we'd be super happy to answer them. So, and just ask them at any time. Okay. So my name is Judy Arnall. I just come on at the front just to say, hello, here I am. And I am a certified Canadian family life educator. I am certified in the brain story and 0 to 3's course, The Growing Brain. So I really love to do more of topics in parenting and attachment parenting, but really root them in the brain because that's where it all starts. So that's me, and this is my gang. So I have 5 children, range in age from 18 to 29 now. So I have 4 sons and a daughter, and one's married, no grandchildren yet. They're all in that university stage. Oh, there they are. Kind of 3 are university graduates. One is working his way through online university, and one is just about to get there. So that's my attachment parented children. And we have been attachment parenting since day one. And, you know, it doesn't make kids dependent. They are very independent. I have one living somewhere else in the province, and I have one living overseas. So that's what they do. And I've written a few books. One is on how to get a grip, how to handle anger and stress and our children's stress and anger, called Parenting with Patience. One is Discipline Without Distress, which is all about non-punitive discipline. So I never spanked my kids, but I stopped giving them timeouts. Probably I did the timeout consequence thing till my oldest one was about 9, and then I realized that this isn't working. So then from then on, we didn't use any punishments ever. We have never punished our teenagers, and as you can see, they're pretty amazing kids. And we just released a book last year called Attachment Parenting Tips, and that's from my 23 years of facilitating parenting groups. There's over 3,000 respectful, kind, gentle tips from parents over the years sharing what worked for them. And then I did a book on self-directed education. So I also am certified to teach several of these programs, which I currently am teaching. And I think parents sometimes that's the most challenging, hardest job in the world. And every parent should have a tip jar on their table. I did this, and I got some quarters and mini chocolate bars, and then I put a wife's tip in the laundry room, and I put a $50 bill in there just to, let my partner know what kind of tip I should be getting. And it stayed empty, so I don't do laundry anymore. Yay! So just some housekeeping things. Well, I used to put this in, but everybody knows how webinars work now, so we will not worry about it. Where does this information come from? That's a good question to ask any course you take. Where do they get their information? Generally, if they're from nonprofit organizations, it's pretty credible stuff. So these are all the agencies, foundations, societies, and services we get our information from, including my books. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I'm just going to turn off my video because it's just distracting. I'll come on in the end, but I just drop in here to say hi so you can see what I look like. So why is sleep important? Well, we all know why it's important for us because we don't function very well without sleep. It's been said that having impaired sleep is about the same as driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. It's that important. We need it to survive. And our children need it for their learning, for their memory, and for their growth. And most children do get the sleep they need. It isn't impacting them too much in the fact that they do wake up a lot. How much is enough sleep? This is from the Canadian Pediatric Society, where they came out with the last recommendations in 2016. This is what they recommend children need. Now, 0 to 4 months is infant, babyhood. They don't recommend anymore how many hours naps should be, or what they say is the total in a 24-hour period is anything up to 18 hours. So that's very general, and that's a good thing because it takes into account every individual child's individual sleep needs. When your baby, what they sleep isn't going to be the same as what your friend's baby sleeps. And you're not doing anything wrong. It's just everybody has different sleep needs. So from 4 to 12 months, it's anywhere from 12 to 14 hours. And that includes 2 to 3 naps a day. From toddlers, 1 to 2 years, that's about 1 or 2 naps too until age 3. And they need 11 to 14 hours a day. And you can see it's going down less. Preschoolers through age 3 to 5, they need about 10 to 13 hours. And most preschoolers usually drop the afternoon nap. School agers need 9 to 12 hours, and of course no naps. And teenagers, they still need 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day. In fact, they need it more in the morning than at night. Now, when we talk about babies sleeping through the night, generally we consider that 5 hours sleep. Not solid sleep, but 5 hours of an increment sleep. That is what's considered sleeping through the night. Although if you ask a non-parent how long is sleeping through the night, they will say anything from 8 to 10 hours maybe. Adults go through 5 sleep cycles a night. Children go through about 7 sleep cycles, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Up until 3 months, children are pretty well unsettled in their sleep habits, meaning they don't fall into a predictable routine at that point. And at 2 months is when they hit what we call the crying curve. That's the time where they are most susceptible to crying. And a lot of times we can't figure out why. We don't know if it's not hunger. We've checked them for diapers. We've checked for temperature, and they're just crying. And that's pretty normal. It's normal enough that we actually call it a title, crying curve. So babies there are pretty well unsettled. About 3 to 5 months, they're settling. That means that they're not settled into a routine yet, but they're getting there, right? See how these overlap? And then 6 to 8 months, they're settled more. By about 9 months, most children are in a predictable routine, although many children are still waking up at night to be fed, and that's normal for them. After a year, they probably settle in, dropping 2 naps to 1 naps, and then 2 to 5 years, they start dropping that other nap. But it depends on each child. So sleep routines are those things we do that cue our body that it's time to sleep. So adults, we have sleep routines. We tend to have a snack before bed. Those are the preferred snacks. Some of us shower. In Japanese culture, they shower at night before bed, so they go to bed super clean. Where in North American culture and European culture, we tend to shower in the morning and be clean for our day. Pajamas, nobody really needs pajamas. All you need is clean sleep clothes. But again, that's a cue to ourselves and our body that it's time to go to sleep. We clean our teeth. A lot of us read before we go to bed, and then we go to sleep. Children need routines too. And especially young children, their brains thrive on predictability. So they need the same routines every night. A snack, a bath, maybe. Depends on your child though. Like a bath could wake some kids up, where other kids it's very soothing. Pajamas, again, if you do pajamas, we never did because we just didn't. It was just too hard to get them out of pajamas in the morning. Cleaning their teeth, reading a book and prayers, if that's your routine, nice little cuddle, and good night. So those are routines for children. If you're rushed, you can't skip any of these. You can tighten it up by shortening it, but you absolutely cannot skip it because children will hold you to it. They want their routines. So it's good to have routines. It's very predictable. Children can't tell time until about age 7 or 8. So it lets them know they're winding down. Some parents actually even put the house to bed every night. They start dimming the lights, turning down the noise, the light, and the house goes to bed, and then the family goes to bed, which is kind of nice too. Now, associations are different from routines. Those are things we associate with sleep. For children, these are typical associations: dark, music, certain video. When I was putting 4 kids to bed and my husband worked out of the country, I got them horizontal and I put on a Disney video. Yes, we use screen time. And the same video, about halfway through, they'd be asleep because what the video did was it got them horizontal, got them quiet, got them looking at something, turned out the lights, and then they fell asleep, which was really, really good. Now, it's okay to have a lot of associations. The more the better, because if you don't want to nurse or rock them to sleep every night, say you want to go out with the girls one night, it's nice to have a video or music or something else that is the same association. Music, I always had the same CD for each child, and that was their cue to go to sleep. Nap time and bedtime. In fact, if my children were out driving now and that same song came on, they would probably go to sleep, which would be scary. So bottle, nursing, rocking, cuddling your child to sleep is no problem. Use that as an association, but as much as possible, vary it, okay? Adults, we have our sleep associations too. I know now when I am horizontal and I lay down to watch a movie on Netflix, but a half an hour later, I am so sleepy. And that to me is an association. It's a sleep association. It's something my brain is cued that sleep is about to start. So as many of those as you can have, the better. Now, like I said, adults have about 5 sleep cycles a night. So nobody ever sleeps through the night. We do not go to bed at 11 o'clock and sleep solid until 7 a.m. We just don't. We wake up through the night. But for the most part, let's go back to our associations. We look around, yep, everything's the same. Our brain is telling us, yep, everything's okay. Go back to sleep. And that's what we do. We go back down into another sleep cycle. Children have the same things too. They go into a sleep cycle and then they come up again, look around. Is the association the same? Oh, things are different. Now I'm going to wake up. Or do they go back down to sleep into another sleep cycle? So in these sleep cycles, they last anywhere from about 90 minutes to 2 hours. The first 20 to 30 minutes is light sleep. And we all know when we're holding our children and they're falling asleep, if we move them in the first 20 to 30 minutes, they will wake up and become cranky and still want to cuddle. So we have to wait until they're in that deep sleep before we can move them. And then we're sure they're not going to wake up. And that usually comes after the 20 to 30 first couple minutes. And then after, they go into a deep sleep for a good period, maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And then they go through the rapid eye movement stage of the sleep cycle. And that is where they dream. The deep sleep is where they get the restorative sleep, and the REM is where they get the restorative sleep. REM is also where they get nightmares when they're older. And then they come up again and wake up, look around, yeah, everything's safe, go back to sleep. And we do the same thing. I wake up every day at 4 a.m. I don't know how my body knows that's the time to wake up, but and if I'm worried about something, I stay awake. If I'm not worried, I can go back into more longer sleep cycle. Temperament affects sleep too. So temperament is more the intensity of personality. We're all born with a certain temperament, but it's on a continuum. So 40% of all children are born easygoing, 30% are born slow to warm up in the middle, and about 10 to 15% are born very spirited or high need. Dr. Sears talks about the fussy baby and high need child in his book, and Mary Sheedy Kurchinka does a really good book on raising your spirited child. And it's important to know what your children's temperament is. And we're going to do a whole web class on this because it's very interesting. But usually, which category do you think would present the most problems for sleep? Not the easygoing children. They can sleep everywhere. My son, so out of 5 kids, I had 1 easygoing, 1 slow to warm, and 3 spirited children. The easygoing one, he slept everywhere. He'd sleep on concrete floors when he was a toddler. He'd sleep on the stairwell. When he went to college, they filled his bed with cornflakes. He slept on that because he couldn't be bothered brushing it off. He was my sleeper. The high need children, no, nothing I could do could get those kids to sleep. Now, my first one, he's, as all our first kids, they're our guinea pigs. And when we are desperate, we try anything. So he was 4 months old. He wasn't sleeping. And that's about the time parents crack. We just can't cope anymore. And I went to a library session from a woman who she did sleep classes on crying it out. So I went to hers and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm desperate. And we tried it and it just went from bad to worse. He was not settling down. He was getting more worked up. I was feeling worse. And we decided that's it. We're not going to do this. And finally, we fell into co-sleeping, and it was just so much better for all the rest of the kids. Absolutely. So be aware of your children's temperament. And if you want to know more, Google it. There's a lot of information on the internet. But again, how that affects sleep is regularity. Children with a high need spirited temperament are not regular sleepers. Their body functions are all over the map in terms of time and even how much sleep they get. They don't get into routines very easily. It's a little harder for them to get into routines and have some regularity in their body functions. Okay. Next, I want to talk about the brain, because the brain is the body's computer, and the brain is where all these concepts of development take place. The physical aspect of the body, the cognitive, intellectual aspect, the social aspect, and the emotional aspect. It all resonates from brain development. And it's imperative that you understand how the brain works in order to understand why your child is not sleeping. So we're going to tonight go through all the age groups. I just got to keep track of time a bit here. Okay, so these are the main parts of the brain. So the brain develops from the bottom to the top and from the back to the front. And for the most part, we like to divide development of children into the sections of the brain, although in real life, they don't neatly work out that way. Like the occipital lobe doesn't just start developing, stop developing, and then done. Then we go on to the temporal lobe. It doesn't work that way. They overlap and they're all growing, developing, functioning, although each part of the brain has a sensitive period where it's more important during that age. Okay, so so your baby is born with 100 billion brain cells called neurons. These are the neurons, and you can see between the neurons there's some gaps, which is what we call synapses. So before birth, a few of these neurons are connected because it has to keep the baby's body, the lungs going, the heart pumping, all those physical gross motor things have to keep going. So some of those brains have to be signaling between neurons. But after birth is where most of these are connected. And they get connected by a neuron sending a neurotransmitter across that gap to a neighboring neuron and forming a pathway. The pathways get reinforced with repeated routines, associations, use, and then in later childhood, early adolescence, the pathways get pruned because the brain needs to become more efficient. And it doesn't need this. It can't work with this. It can work with this and become more efficient. I like this. This is my chart, but it actually is a representation of a brain. Now, this is the front. This is the bottom. So if you look at babies, this is the most sensitive part of the brain development happening here. The cerebellum and the occipital lobe and the brain stem. This is what we call the bottom brain. These are bottom brain functions. And what the cerebellum does is keep the breathing going, the heart, the blood sugar, the coordination, and the motor control. So most body functions. Same with the brain stem. All those things are very important for babies. And babies, their eyesight at 3 months old is the same as adults. So that occipital lobe is very well developed. So these are what we call the bottom brain or the hind brain, and those are very important for babies, okay? Then you move up to the temporal region. This is especially sensitive in toddlers. That emotional center of the brain where the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the hippocampus all comprise the limbic system and the emotional centers. And we all know, and this is what I try to remember, is brainstem, baby, temporal, toddler. So guess what's next? Parietal, preschooler. Yes, we're working our way up the brain from the back to the front. So the parietal lobe is where the preschooler starts to really use his or her 5 senses and takes in the world in terms of her perception. So really thinking of sensory processing, attention, language development, and understanding objects in relation to each other. And then we go to this part, the frontal part. And when I think frontal, I think first grade. These are the school age years. And that's when the brain is really starting to understand consequences, critical thinking skills are starting to kick in, and real understanding of the world around them. And then the prefrontal, think prefrontal, puberty. They're starting to reason, decision make, plan, and think of abstract understandings, okay? So when you read sleep books, and I remember in Dr. Ferber's sleep books, he was saying, like, If you let your baby in your bed with you, he's going to start thinking, this is really comfortable. I'm going to start crying so I get taken into bed every night. Do you think a baby can actually think that way with bottom brain development? No. No. That's more this kind of thinking. More manipulative thinking occurs here. It doesn't occur in babies. Babies only feel through their senses. They don't even do much thinking at all. Thinking starts coming in the toddler years. And then again, it's very raw thinking that is based on emotion or dopamine. You know, when a toddler steals a cookie, that is totally driven by dopamine, which is a hormone that feels good, gives us that feel good feeling. And more cognitive manipulation can start coming from 3 to 5 in the preschool years, but it's certainly not here in the baby years. So that's why I like to go through the brain, and I'm going to relate this back to you. So here's a development of the cognitive development, the executive function of the brain. And this is what we call focus, working memory, self-control. As you can see here, from 0 to 3, not a whole lot there. But from 3 to 6, yeah, it's a big leap right there. And the second big leap is from 13 to 25. And this has a lot of ramifications for learning and understanding later on. So when I said children can't understand time until age 7, that's about right here, about 7. Okay, so let's go through the stages and see what the sleep challenges are. So infants are about 0 to 6 months. Like I said, bottom brain functions here, all they think about is sensory input and output. If they're hungry, they cry. That's their input, that's their output. If they're scared, they cry. If they're wet, they cry. If they're lonely, they cry. That's what they do. Input, output. Again, not a whole lot of thinking. This is their sensory input, output. Okay. So what keeps babies up at that age? Just sensory cues. They may be hungry. They may be cold, hot, not so much hot, but usually cold, hot, wet, or they may be sick. So if that's what's waking them up, meet their needs, fix them. Or they can be disorganized. And again, that's why we say from 0 to 4 months, they are all over the map. They're not settling into a pattern yet. So in that time of disorganization, comfort them, hold them, try and get them back to sleep. They will get into a pattern, but not then. Some of the safety recommendations are that babies should be put to bed on their back, on their own sleep surface in the parents' room for the first year. No bumper pads in the crib or bassinet, no stuffies, no heavy blankets, no pillow until 1 year. Absolutely. Babies, let's look at babies. Now, babies, again, the occipital lobe, they can see. They're starting to move around about 8 months, depending on. Again, they're very elementary in their thinking. They see something, they want to touch it or explore it. That's about all the cognitive level they're at. So more around this part here. Okay, so they're not really thinking much. What keeps babies up at that age? Hunger, feed them. Separation anxiety is starting to go about 10 months. And that is comfort them. And they also have development surges. Now, the new word for that is called sleep regressions, but that's what they come from, is that when babies are on the verge of a new development, Either they're going to stand up or they're going to balance themselves on their knees. They usually have a period before that where they eat, they cluster feed, they gear up on all those calories, and they don't sleep, and they cry a lot. That is just what they do before that next stage of brain development and development really kicks in. And all you can do for that is kind of just accept it. It's going to happen. Clear your calendar, spend a lot more time in bed feeding, and just let them grow and do what they need to do to grow, whether that's sleeping, being comforted, or eating. Some ways you can make it better, make it more comfortable, is try and recreate the womb. So when babies are in the womb, it's dark, they're confined, they're constricted, they hear white noise, they're warm, they feel comforted. So try and recreate that outside the womb. So that's where that white noise comes in, a water swooshing from a noise machine. Dark really helps. But again, remember, from 0 to 3 months, or especially the first 2 months, infants have their days and nights are all upside down. They have no idea of what's daytime, what's nighttime. Although their sight does get better, 3 to 4 months, they're seeing adult abilities, so they can get used to it by then. Warmth, everybody sleeps better when they're cold and they become warm. Excuse me, smell too. Babies' sense of smell is really amazing. So if you're co-sleeping with a baby and you leave the bed, they can smell you gone. So that's kind of why we advise parents to sleep with a towel or a t-shirt, get your breast milk all over it, let it smell like you, and then when you're leaving, you can leave that item of clothing and your smell is still there. When I had babies, I would rock them to sleep in my sling, and then I try and get them down in the sling, but the sling wrapped around them kind of in a swaddly way, so it was still the same association. Again, keep up routine and sleep associations. Sucking is really helpful. In our province, they say don't take away a pacifier until children are age 5, because it helps them get through the turmoil of the toddler years. Unless your dental professional advises it. Movement really helps too. So as much as you can stimulate movement. And being contained and swaddled is very nice too. You can swaddle with the hands in or without. A lot of babies like to suck their fingers. And you want to watch for sleep signals. If babies get too overtired, they're harder to settle down. They reach that point of no return, and it takes a lot harder for them to get settled down and stop crying. So if you notice your baby sleepy, try and get them to sleep. The more babies sleep, the more sleep they sleep. Okay, sleep training plans must be respectful to both the parent and the child according to Alberta Health Services recommendations. They're not recommended before 6 months when babies are starting to settle in a routine. And in attachment parenting, we believe good sleep habits come from brain development, not training. Everybody learns to self-soothe eventually. Every child learns to sleep through the night eventually, well, except for those sleep cycles. Every child learns to sleep. You do not need to train a child to sleep. So we believe no sleep training plans are attachment parenting. If we want to respect the child's developmental ability to sleep when they need to sleep. And we don't want parents to cause the crying, even if somebody comforts the child. So we want to minimize crying that can cause stress. So what is stress? When babies, children, adults are under stress, our bodies release a stress hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is okay in small amounts, okay? But in long-term systematic application of cortisol flooding the brain, it can damage these neurons, okay? How does it do that? How it does that is the amygdala and the hippocampus, it puts the chemicals that come between these two on high alert. And then when the body's on high alert, it floods the brain with cortisol, and that's not good. It's okay short term, but not long term. Short term stress is good, it's positive. Long-term stress that is not alleviated is what we call toxic stress, and that is not good. That is stress that is prolonged and not buffered by a caring person. And a lot of sleep training plans do prolong the stress. It does. Okay, what's the difference between co-sleeping and bed sharing? So co-sleeping can be sleeping in the same room, maybe not in the same sleep surface. Bed sharing is sharing the same sleep surface. So if you're going to bed share, it's safest to have a mattress on the floor. And in many cultures, it's not mom, dad, child, and dog. It is just mom and child. And child is usually either if you have a bed against the wall, child's against the wall, but child is safe and not going to fall between a crevice between the bed and a wall. Mom, no drugs or alcohol. Don't bed share if you're obese or too tired. Make sure your long hair is tied back, no pillows or blankets, and it's recommended not to bed share if somebody has been smoking in the house, okay? So siblings, dogs, even partners should not be, you should not have your baby between those. Okay, toddlers. Now, the part of the brain, the most sensitive, is the feeling part, which is this middle part, the limbic system or the temporal lobe. And this is 18 months to 3 years, so there's a lot of emotional stuff going on here. It can be a lot of flooding during the day, through tantrums, and through the night, through not wanting to separate from parents. So, what keeps them up, toddlers? Separation anxiety. So separation anxiety occurs from 10 months to about 3 years. And in spirited children, it occurs a lot later to about 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 7 years. That's why a lot of children who are spirited are still in the family bedroom. And it works. They don't want to separate at night, and that's okay. Whoever says no rules, though. So when it's, school-age children. So what keeps them up? Separation anxiety. That's the big one. About the end of the first year, babies start to realize that they're a separate person from their adult person, their attachment person. So they realize they can be left, and that's when separation anxiety kicks in. They don't want to be left. They want to be attached to that person for the next couple years because it's safe, feels good, it's comforting. So if you can co-sleep, that is awesome. Awesome. Also, they get night terrors. And again, we'll talk about that a little later. Teething keeps them up. And sometimes they just want to play. They're bored. So as much as possible, put them back to bed. Keep the lights out. Don't make it party time. Be boring. And that's really hard to do when you're co-sleeping. Okay, we have a question. Raquel says, my baby is almost 3 months old and we have been bed sharing since she was born. I always go to bed with her around 8:30 or 9. If I want to make her bedtime a little earlier, not go to bed when she does, how would I approach that while bed sharing? Okay, well, it's kind of not recommended that you leave babies alone on a sleep surface unless it's a crib. Yes, but having said that, a lot of parents do. Um, a lot of parents make a border of pool noodles, so they can put pool noodles under the sheet so that it's a nice little barrier that children don't roll off the bed. Because kids don't have that sense of where the bed ends yet. They don't have that ability. So just kind of make their sleep surface as safe as possible. Make sure it's a mattress on the floor. If she can sleep, if you don't want to go to bed that earlier, try and have a dark corner in your living room that if you're watching Netflix, you could put the baby down. At 3 months old, they can get very well used to noise, right? That's another thing. You don't want your house super quiet. You want your babies to get used to noise, especially if you're going to have baby number 2. So, so anyways, that's kind of, so so nurse her, get her to sleep, and make sure the environment is super safe. Okay, so here's separation anxiety. So it occurs anywhere from 8 months to 3 years, and they realize they're a separate person. Here are some sleep options, and we encourage you to do whatever works so everyone is sleeping safely and no one is crying. So the toddler can sleep in their own bed, maybe parent leaves and baby steps. Toddler sleeps in parent's bed, toddler sleeps with siblings. Maybe the toddler camps in the living room sofa until the parents go to bed and they carry them up. A lot of parents have a toddler nesting place in the floor next to their bed. Toddler could start in their own bed and may climb in with parents, or toddler starts in their parents' bed and gets moved. There's lots of options. Parents are really resourceful, super resourceful. But if toddlers don't want to go to bed, spend some time together, maybe send your partner in to comfort them. Look at your sleep associations, maybe music playing, or even a digital photo frame in their room. Get big, full face photos of you, your partner, siblings, maybe the dog. and then, right? Because so they can see you, but they know it's a photo. They don't know it's a photo, but they can see you and it feels familiar and it's a good sleep association. Very handy. You don't have to be there. Your pictures are. A lot of times you're transitioning naps from maybe dropping that afternoon nap or just totally dropping naps. Those are difficult times. It takes about a couple months to do that. Make sure you avoid driving or movies around that 4 o'clock time or children will fall to sleep. Get them busy doing something while you're cooking dinner. Maybe letting them play with water in the summertime because, at the sink, because then they are wide awake with water. And maybe let them have a nap every 3rd day and do a gradual dropping of the naps. Preschoolers, that's age 3 to 5. Okay, so again, the parietal lobe is much more sensitive. That one right up here is where they're starting to really understand make-believe. They're learning about reality and fantasy, and their imaginations are growing. That's a really good thing for brain development, but not so good for sleep. Why? Because they start getting nightmares. Their imaginations are so big, they're starting to think there's monsters in the closet. They're starting to worry and have fears. It's really a big leap in brain development, but it's good. But it also impacts their sleep. So there's lots of things you can do. You can talk to them. You can change the pillowcase and they'll have better dreams, or just bring them into bed and cuddle them. Sometimes, that's just what they want. Now, it's important to know, up until age 5, at least 70% of families report that they get up at least once a night. Whether it's teething, night terrors, separation anxiety, children under age 5 do not sleep without parents through the night. And that's just a simple fact. I wish it was different. Everybody's looking for the Holy Grail, but there isn't one other than accept that you're not going to sleep well until your kids are 5. Then they start school and then they're really tired, and then they tend to do okay. They go to bed every night and sleep solid. Okay, so night terrors, they happen in transitions between sleep cycles. And night terrors are kind of a child's sleepwalking. They're awake, they look like they're awake, but they're not really awake. They're in a trance. Happens to 1 in 5 children, and they're different from nightmares. Nightmares are bad dreams during the rapid eye movement cycle. Night terrors are not dreaming. They're just not awake, but they're just very scary. They're worse when kids are overtired, sick, or traveling. Now, best practices are don't wake them up, just reassure them, try and get them back to bed, and just keep them safe, and they will go back to sleep. And children grow out of them. They have no lasting effects, and usually in the school years they diminish or they turn into sleepwalking. So my last son had a lot of night terrors, and he started sleepwalking until he was about 12. School-aged children. Now, again, the frontal cortex. That's where they're able to start thinking logically, concretely, and tangible. This is when they understand consequences. And this is when they make mistakes, they make decisions that aren't good. This is this part, the frontal cortex. What keeps them up at night? Lots of things. So they have real worries from movies, life, social media. They have worries and anxiety, and they have about 20,000 thoughts going through their heads during one day. So they're thinking a lot more than the preschoolers and toddlers and babies do. So here's some strategies: is schedule one-on-one time. These are the years they don't want to go to bed, and it's really hard to get them to bed. If they're worried, have a next day plan, help them keep a journal, maybe listen to music or a book tape, have a worry chair that they go and do all their worrying, and then leave it and try and focus on a single scene. There's lots of strategies to help school-aged children. Teenagers, they have that prefrontal cortex there where they're starting to get their abstract thinking skills, and surprisingly enough, the temporal lobe is sensitive again, the same as in toddlers. So that hormone surge is, cranking out those emotions and feelings, and it's not always being taken over by that critical thinking. So that's what they have to deal with. What keeps them up? Anxiety, fears, screens, circadian rhythms. So they can't go to sleep early. They have to go to sleep later because their body tells them to, and then they want to sleep late in the morning, which is a very good reason to homeschool. So what can you do? Just talk to them, talk about good sleep hygiene and turning the screens off 2 hours before they go to bed, maybe reading instead, and just adjusting their routines. Okay, so if children still can't sleep, so now you know how the brain works and what problems it presents for different age groups. So how do you cope? If you can't get your children to sleep, how can you get more sleep? Best way is send your child out with a partner, not in your house, out. give them a good 6 hours out there if you can, so that you can relax, have a deep, deep REM, deep sleep. And you know that they're going to be well taken care of. If you can't do that, at least go to a room with a fan, with white noise, so you can't hear what's going on. Ask for help. Ask somebody to come to your house, maybe look after the baby while you could get a few hours sleep. Trade sleep times with another mom or your partner, or start a sleep co-op where if you're up with your child, you may as well take another child and let that mom get sleep. A lot of parents have sleep co-ops where they get together at different houses for the afternoon, and 2 parents sleep and 2 parents manage all the kids. So, and then the next day, those parents get to sleep. So working out a way that you can get more sleep through those times is really, really good. If you can't sleep and you're super tired, get coffee, get exercise, get out in the sunshine. It'll make you feel a bit more energized, and exercise helps everybody sleep. That's another thing too, is teenagers or children, lack of exercise will not help their sleep habits. So sleep whenever you can. I know there's always something to do that needs to be done, but you need to take care of you, and you are the most important person for your child. You need to replenish your bucket and your sleep needs, and then you can be a better mom. And you will always have laundry to do the rest of your life, or you will always have that report to churn out. That you will do it much better and faster when you're rested. And try and savor the moments. And this is hard because I'm a parent of 5 kids. I don't think I slept for about 10 years from my oldest to my youngest, because both those bookends were high need children. And my last was the one that just totally put me over the charts. He was so high need, I don't think he slept the first 3 years. But now that they're teenagers, I get so much good sleep. I am catching up. So don't worry, you will sleep again. Your children will sleep again. You will get sleep. And it's hard to enjoy the moments through this fog of sleeplessness. It really is hard, but you're doing the best you can do, and you can't do anything more. So just try and get through it. Everything's a stage. It will get better, and every child will learn to sleep. And in the meantime, there's a lot of sleep-deprived parents out there. There really is. So this is the end of our presentation. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, feel free to ask, or you can email me later. I love this poem. It's the parent's affirmation of imperfection. It's perfectly okay for me to be imperfect. That includes not being a perfect parent. That means it's okay. I've already made a lot of mistakes as a parent, and it's okay. I'm going to make other mistakes in the future. What's not okay is for me to pretend that I'm perfect and hide my mistakes from myself. Instead, I'll catch my mistakes with a smile and learn what they have to teach me. That way, I won't make the same mistakes too often, and I'll never be a perfect parent. And that's okay, because my goal is excellence, not perfection. And that's what happens. So feel free to email me. If you're a member, feel free to ask questions in our members only Facebook group, and we will absolutely have this recording for you. If you're not a member and you want to become a member, you can get all our monthly webinars for free for the sale price of $29.99 until the end of June. So I hope that helps. Okay, we have a question. I heard babies should follow a wake, eat, play, sleep schedule. Do you recommend that? I've read that too. I've read so many sleep books. And the thing about sleep books is, you get a new routine or a new thing that you can sell to parents, and then you can sell more books. But you should follow what your child wants. If this works, you can try a wake, eat, play, sleep schedule. Try it. And it's good to have a routine, whatever your child's routine is. So try that. But if they resist or it doesn't work, feel free to drop it. Okay, you don't have to. Most children, excuse me, most children fall into a schedule of their own. So around about 4 months, maybe your baby will wake up at 6, you feed them, they play a bit, may want a snack, maybe go down for a morning nap, then they wake up, they play a bit, get hungry, want lunch, go down for a nap. They will naturally fall into a schedule that is pretty consistent with that. But they have their odd little quirks too, and it might not be the same schedule. So it's more important to follow your baby because they're the best manual of what you should do. Absolutely. Every parenting book has a chapter that's blank, and that's the one about your baby, and you have to discover it and observe it and see what works. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I hope this was helpful. And remember, you are all your baby needs. You're the best person in the world for your baby. And just keep on doing what you're doing, but remember to fill your bucket too, okay? Okay, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.